Hello everyone. In today's session, as you all can see, we will be doing and covering everything that is important in August. All right. So it will be a 1 hour long session, and we will quickly sift through all the important topics for August. You will be given a good chunk of content. You all can go through the content, and you all can take down your important pointers. All right. In the session, we will move through the important days for the month of August. Then we will move on to the national news. We'll move on to the international news, and then obviously concluding today's session with the awards that have been given in this month and one particular news with respect to the sports section. Alright, okay. Now beginning with the important days, the first day is the Hiroshima and the Nagasaki Day. So 6th of August every year we celebrate as the Hiroshima Day, and 9th of August every day we celebrate as the Nagasaki Day. So what happened here? On these two particular days, the World War II came to a conclusive end. And how did it come to this end? It came to this end with the United States of America dropping bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Alright, so the why Japan was target? Because Japan undertook this bombing of the Pearl Harbor base, which was US naval base in Hawaii. And after this particular bombing, USA formally entered into the Second World War. Alright, USA entered the Second World War, and then this imperialistic race and mad war between US and Japan began. After which US undertook the making of two major atomic bombs or nuclear bombs, which was undertaken under the Manhattan Project, and it began in 1942. And then obviously they dropped these bombs on Hiroshima on the 6th of August and Nagasaki on the 9th of August, which brought to an end the Second World War with the final surrender of the third power of the Axis power, that is Japan. Alright, so you may keep in mind the Pearl Harbor attack and what significance this particular attack holds. The second thing you need to keep in mind that the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings have completed 80 years this very year. Then Japanese people were highly imperialistic, specifically under the General Hideki Tojo, who is also known as General Tojo. He was very, very imperialistic, and he did not wish to give up Japanese imperialistic claims, alright, which eventually led to the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, alright. So you need to remember the Manhattan Project. It is the same project which is undertaken by Robert J. Oppenheimer. There's a very famous movie on it. Please do go watch it. The Manhattan Project began in 1942, and it led to the testing of nuclear bombs known as the Trinity test, which was successfully tested on 16th of July 1945, and just 20 days later they were dropped on Hiroshima and then Nagasaki. Alright, so Hiroshima dropped on 6th of August 1945. The name of the bomb was Little Boy, and it was a uranium based bomb, and it was dropped by the aircraft B-29 named Enola Gay. Alright, which obviously led to massive deaths. The next one was Nagasaki, 9th of August. The bomb's name was Fat Man, and it was a plutonium-based bomb. Also, check the name of the aircraft that led to the dropping of these bombs. Alright, the Nagasaki bomb. Here you all can see this one name, Kokura. So Kokura was the original place where the second bomb was supposed to be dropped. That is, in case of Nagasaki, it was supposed to be dropped here, but because of the after effect and that entire cloud cover caused by Hiroshima, the place was changed from Kokura to Nagasaki. Alright, so dropping of bombs in Nagasaki took place on 9th of August, another important day. Alright, then coming to the next significant day in August is the Quit India Day, which is observed on 8th of August. Why? Because on 8th of August 1942, the Quit India movement was launched from Gowalia Tank Maidan in Bombay. Alright, why was it launched? Because in the Second World War, Britain had forcefully entered India into the war. Failure of the Cripps mission led by Sir Stanford Cripps came to India in 1942, talked about dominion status, which the Indians no longer wanted. They wanted complete independence, so this mission was rejected. And then obviously the Congress leaders since 1929, with the adoption of the resolution of Purna Swaraj, no longer wished for anything other than complete independence as the goal of the INC and as the realization of the British government in India. Alright. So against this, the Indians led by Mahatma Gandhi launched their last massive nationwide movement known as the Quit India movement on 8th of August 1942. Date is important, from Govalia Tank Maidan in Mumbai, and the resolution was obviously Quit India, and it was here that Mahatma Gandhi gave his very famous slogan, do or die. Alright, one more thing, that this entire slogan of Quit India was given by Yusuf Meherali. Alright, Yusuf Meherali, he was a socialist, and his name is important. Alright, his name is important with respect to something else also. He also coined the famous title, the famous slogan, Simon Go Back. Alright, so these two slogans were given by him is important. Alright, then nature of the movement, obviously mass civil disobedience was undertaken, leadership arrest. The date was launched on 8th of August. Within 24 hours, major leaders like Gandhi, Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, they were all arrested, and the movement was basically left leaderless. But there were newer, younger leaders who came to the forefront during this particular movement, like Aruna Asaf Ali, Usha Mehta, J.P. Narayan, Ram Manohar Lohia. They were all younger leaders, and the most significant aspect of this particular movement is the coming up and about of female leaders like Usha Mehta and Aruna Asaf Ali, who actually led an entire underground movement. Alright, along with these underground movements led by Aruna Asaf Ali and Usha Mehta, who also led the Congress radio secretly, there were certain parallel governments which were formed, like in Satara by Nana Patil, UP in Balia by Chittu Pandey, and Tamluk, Bengal by Jatiya Sarkar. The names are important. Alright. Okay. Now coming to the next important day, it is the 9th of August, 9th of August. And this particular day is extremely important for this year because 9th of August 1925, the Kakori conspiracy case took place. Alright. So this Kakori conspiracy case is actually a revolutionary activity to sponsor armed revolution and rebellion in the country. Alright, so what was this armed revolution or armed rebellion in the country? The armed revolution or armed rebellion simply meant that the revolutionaries, younger leaders, they wanted to undertake a massive armed rebellion against the Britishers, to use violence, armaments, etc. to overthrow the Britishers. Alright, so for this they conspired to loot a train known as the 8 downtown train, which is passing through Kakori, which was believed to be carrying British treasuries. They wanted to loot it and then to use it to sponsor the revolutionary activities in the country. Now, this particular Kakori incident was undertaken by the members of Hindustan Republican Association, which was founded in 1924 by leaders like Ram Prasad Bismil, Ashfaq Ullah, and Yogesh Chandra Chatterjee. It is mentioned in the next slide. Yogesh Chandra Chatterjee, Sachendra Nath Bakshi, etc. And this Kakori conspiracy was basically led by these leaders: Ram Prasad Bismil, Ashfaq Ullah, Rajendra Lahiri, Chandrasekhar Azad, etc. The names of Roshan Singh, Rajendra Lahiri, Ashfaq Ullah, and Ram Prasad Bismil. The 4 names are very important because these 4 people or revolutionaries were tried and hanged for the Kakori conspiracy case. Alright, so you need to remember the names of these leaders. Then Hindustan Republican Association, key personality is very important. Basic idea was to establish a United States of India along the same grounds as United States of America. Then Hindustan Republican Association was renamed as Hindustan Socialist Republican Association in 1928, and this entire idea of socialism was added by Chandrasekhar Azad and Bhagat Singh. Alright, and this renaming was done at Firoz Shah Kotla Maidan in Delhi in 1928. Alright. Okay, now coming to the next important day, it is the World Elephant Day, which is observed on 12th of August. For this, you need to remember that in India, obviously, it will be undertaken, the entire celebrations will be undertaken by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. This day was founded on 12th of August 2012 by a Canadian elephant conserver, basically, Patricia Sims, and the Elephant Reintroduction Foundation of Thailand. Alright, the theme is not so important. Then other important facts for it: Project Elephant was launched in 1992. Very important. Minister of Environment by default. It is the National Heritage Animal of India, and these are the conservation status of Indian elephants. Alright, so IUCN Red List, it is endangered in category. Wildlife Protection Act 1972, Schedule 1, Sites, Appendix 1. Alright, then let's talk a little bit about the elephant census. The elephant census is also undertaken every 5 years. The last elephant census was undertaken in 2017. After that, we did have a next one in 2022, but the data was not published because of certain contention. Alright, so as of now, we refer to the 2017 elephant census data undertaken by the Wildlife Institute of India. Total elephants approximately 30,000. Rankings based on the state. First is Karnataka, Assam and Kerala. Total elephant reserves in the country is 33. Total elephant corridors 88. And most recent elephant reserve has been announced this year only. It is the Tarai Elephant Reserve, which is in Uttar Pradesh. Alright. Okay, then coming to the next one, which is the 14th of August, observed as Partition Horrors Remembrance Day, which was incepted by the Prime Minister in 2021, and every year on 14th of August we observe it as this day, and 14th of August is also observed as Pakistan Independence Day. Alright, then coming to the next one, which is the Independence Day of India. This is the 79th Independence Day, celebrating 78 years of independence. Alright, so this year the theme is important, was Naya Bharat. And like always, the Prime Minister hosted the red flag, the national flag at the Red Fort, and gave a 103-minute long speech, and also made certain announcements during this particular Independence Day speech. One important thing that he also said that we are going to become a $10 trillion economy by 2047. Alright, as of now, our goal is to become a $5 trillion economy by 2030, I think 2028 or 2050, and then a 10 trillion by 2047. Alright, then these were the key highlights of the PM speech. The first one is undertaking a national deepwater exploration mission, which seeks to explore oil and natural gas reserves. Then Mission Sudarshan Chakra, which also seeks to establish or enhance India's defense capabilities, and making of this Sudarshan Chakra by 2035. Alright. Naxalism, he made a very collected a major prominent detail on Naxalism, saying that Naxalism has reduced from 25 districts to 20 districts. Agricultural production data was given to us, which simply said that India ranks 1 in milk production, pulses and jute production, and 2nd in rice, wheat, cotton, fruits and vegetables. Other than that, he also said that made in India semiconductor chips will be launched by the end of 2025. The next significant announcement, or basically just commemoration, was Atmanirbhar Bharat Gaganyaan mission, through which obviously he seeks to draw attention to the 4 astronauts that we will be sending to the International Space Station under the Gaganyaan mission. And other than that, he also just commemorated India's efforts to establishing the Bharatiya Antariksh Station on the same lines of international space stations. Alright. Then a scheme was launched, which was Prime Minister Viksit Bharat Rozgar Yojana. Under this, 1 lakh crore investment will be put in. Newly employed youth will receive a one-time payment of 15,000 rupees, and it is aiming to benefit 3 crore young Indians. Alright. Okay, then Namo Drone Didi initiative, the central sector scheme, and under this it obviously seeks to help the agricultural female farmers by empowering them and giving them drones on rental basis to help them, put fertilizers, etc. in their agricultural fields. Alright, you all can see this data. And then Lakhpati Didis, the government also pledges to make 3 crore women Lakhpati Didis. Alright, okay. Now coming to the next major announcement was the Gyan Bharata mission. under the Ministry of Culture, and under this particular mission, it is similarly on the lines of Memory of the World program, where under this mission, the government has announced that the government is going to locate handwritten texts, manuscripts, and centuries-old documents using artificial intelligence and today's technology to preserve them for the future generations. And then the National Critical Mission, which was launched this year in February, the Prime Minister announced that it will explore around 1200 minerals. Alright, 1200 mineral sites. Okay. Then coming to the next important day for the month of August. Before 29th of August, we also have the 23rd of August, which is another important day, which is also known as National Space Day, or because Chandrayaan 3 successfully landed on the moon's south pole. And other than that, also 23rd of August is ISRO establishment day. Alright. After that, we have 29th of August, which is National Sports Day. On this day, we commemorate the feats of Major Dhyan Chand, who won India many goals at the Olympics, pre-independence, also post-independence. Then this year, the theme was Ek Ghanta Khel Ke Maidan. Alright. Okay. About him, he's known as hockey wizard in India. He won major Olympic goals for India post-independence. This is 1948, 52, 56, 64, and a silver in 1960. Other than that, he's also been given the Padma Bhushan. Alright. Okay. Then in January this year, the government had made announcements for the winner of Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award, which were these four individuals: Manu Bhaker, D. Gukesh, Harmanpreet Singh, and Praveen Kumar. Alright. These four were announced as the winners. The awards were given on the National Sports Day. Alright, it is the highest sporting honor. It was instituted in 1991, and then in 2021 it was renamed as it was instituted as Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award in 1991. It was renamed in 2021 as the Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award. Alright. Okay. Then coming to the awards distribution. And these are certain other categories of awards in sports. Arjuna Award is the second highest sporting honor. Dronacharya, highest award given to the coaches. Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar for organizations who are promoting sports, and Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Trophy is to universities who come first in inter-university sports competitions. Alright. Okay. Then this year we also got the National Sports Policy, which was announced on National Sports Day, and the sports policy is important. Although not much information has been given about it, right now you need to keep in mind that it has these 5 pillars on which it is based, and other than that, this is the third National Sports Policy. The first one we got in 1984 and the second one in 2001. This is the third one. Right? And these are the 5 pillars. You all can go through it. Other than that, the government also launched National Sports Governance Act 2025, and under this particular Governance Act, the first initiative taken is the bodies established. Alright. So these bodies, the National Olympic Committee, National Paralympic Committee, National Sports Federation will be, along with that, regional sports federations will be established under this particular policy, just to streamline sports activities in the country. The next one is that they also have undertaken this particular establishment of Governance Act just to promote better sport habits in the country, and also they categorize these bodies as public authorities so that they come under the ambit of Right to Information Act, and people might get to know as to how and where are they spending money or funds that these bodies are getting, and how well are they spending this amount. Alright. And then obviously the Safe Sports Policy has also been framed under this particular Governance Act. As you all know that there was a lot of chaos in the news recently with respect to our female sports person protesting against the head of the sports federation, that is Brij Bhushan Singh. So to do away with such things, this has been included this time. Alright. Okay. Then other initiatives of the government are the Khelo India program launched in 2016. You need to remember it was basically till 2021. It has been extended further for 5 years from 2021, and this has been only undertaken to inculcate playing habits, sports habits in the country. Then Kirti Khelo India Rising Talent Identification. ये सब इसलिए करा गया है so that basically we can catch hold of young sporting talents from 9 to 18 years, which will aid India in coming into the top 10 sporting, becoming the top 10 sporting nations by 2036 and top 5 by 2047. All right. Then Target Olympic Podium Scheme (TOPS). This simply seeks to provide funds to train our national sports personalities to be capable and adept enough to reach at the Olympic levels and bring laurels for India. Then Road to 2036, this has been undertaken because India is bidding to host the Olympics in 2036. Alright. Okay, now coming to the national news section. Alright, the first topic in the national news section is the GST. The GST is important this time because the Prime Minister had made these new announcements in the GST slabs in the Independence Day scheme, and it is also known as GST reforms or GST 2.0. Alright, okay. Now we get into the static part of it. The things that you need to remember is that previously there were a total of 5 GST slabs: 0, 5%, 12%, 18% and 28%. Alright, these tax slabs have been cut down and now we have 0, we have 5% and we have 28% and 18%. The 12% tax slab has been subsumed into 5%. And the 28% tax slab has been subsumed into 18%. Alright. So the tax slabs have been reduced, plus the government has announced a new tax slab of 40%. Alright. Which will be mostly for sin goods, demerit goods, and luxury goods. Alright. So this is the new changes in the GST that the government has announced. And with this, the static part of GST becomes important. So you need to keep in mind that the GST was implemented in the country from 1st of July 2017, and it is known as the 101st Constitution Amendment Act of 2016, and it replaced all these other taxes previously. Then coming to the history. In 2003, the Kelkar Task Force for the first time recommended a GST type taxation in the country. In 2003, this was undertaken under the Prime Ministership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So you need to remember that Atal Bihari Vajpayee is known as the father of GST in India. Alright, and the next significant milestone was the budget speech of 2006 and 7, where they announced that on 1st of April 2010, they are going to implement a national level goods and services tax. Alright, then the next one was the introduction of the 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 122nd Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2014, which was passed as the 101st Constitutional Amendment Act of 2016, and then it was finally implemented on 1st of July 2017. Alright, so these dates are important. Then coming to the amendment, because it is an amendment to the Constitution, it is an amendment because it seeks to include 3 new articles: Article 246A, 269A and 279A. 246A basically says that the Parliament has greater powers when it comes to implementing GST reforms or to bringing about any other change in the legislation of GSTs. Article 269 simply says that the GST is collected at 2 levels, the center and the state. The center must undertake devolution of funds from the center to each and every state in the country as recommended by the GST Council. And Article 279A talks about the establishment of the GST Council. Alright? Okay. Then these are the legal frameworks. These are the various acts that have been introduced and implemented as part of the constitutional reforms of GST. Then coming to the main features, there are 2 main features that you need to keep in mind: that it is a destination-based taxation system, meaning that the tax is now put at the end of the production process when the good goes into the market for sale and not at any intermediate level. And the next and the other important fact is that characteristic is that it has a dual structure. A dual structure meaning that whenever you go out, you eat anything, you have a bill, and the bill will always have two GSTs mentioned in it. For example, if that restaurant puts a total GST of 18% on their food items, then when you receive the bill, you will see that there are two GSTs that have been mentioned. One will be the CGST, so 18% का tax है. CGST में 9% सेंटर के पास जा रहा है, SGST 9% स्टेट के पास आ रहा है. So every tax slab will be divided at two levels, that is the center level and the state level. And उसके अलावा we also have an IGST. There are three categories of GST, but it has a dual structure that half of it goes to the center and half of it goes to the state. Then it has multiple tax slabs. These are the tax slabs which were the old ones. Now 12 and 28 have been removed. We only have 0, 5 and 18, and we have a new one that is 40%. Alright, so this is all with respect to the GST reforms you need to keep in mind. Alright, then coming to the next one, which is MS Swaminathan. Now MS Swaminathan is important this year because 7th of August 2025 we observed his centenary year. Centenary year meaning that 100th birthday, and he's just passed away 2 years before. Passed away in 2023. In 2024, he was awarded the Bharat Ratna, and in 2025, in his memory, the Prime Minister also launched the MS Swaminathan Global Award for Peace and Food. Alright, so peace and food, why? Because he is known as the father of Green Revolution in India, which was launched and established in 1965 in the country. The purpose of the Green Revolution is to foster better growth of crops, specifically rice and wheat, with greater inputs in terms of irrigation, greater inputs in terms of chemical fertilizers, modern methods of cultivation, etc. Alright, so this year, centenary anniversary, father of Green Revolution. The term Green Revolution was coined by William S. Gould in 1968, and these have been the various awards and recognitions that he's received. You need to remember the 1987 one, which is the first World Food Prize, and it was given to MS Swaminathan. Alright, okay, these were other awards that he's received. You can go through this. And coming to the conference, the theme is not so important. You need to remember that Global MS Swaminathan Award for Food and Peace was instituted, and it was awarded to Nigerian scientist Professor Ademola A. Ademli. Alright, and what is the award? The award seeks to give a prize money of $25,000. The eligibility is scientists or professionals under the age of 50 years. They should be nationals of developing countries, and if not developing countries, nationals, then they must be working in a developing country. Only then, for at least 5 years, only then will they be given this award. Alright. Okay, now coming to the next important topic, which is the National Designated Authority. Now this particular authority, NDA, has been established this year. What is this authority? This authority is a mandatory authority that is to be established under the Paris Agreement of 2015. What is this Paris Agreement? This agreement was signed in the Conference of Parties 21 of UNFCCC. Alright, so then in 2015 they had called for all member countries to determine their NDCs. NDCs क्या है? Nationally determined contributions. To determine their NDCs, and India also gave 3 NDCs of her own. What are these NDCs? These were India's NDCs. India also gave 3 of her NDCs, and it said back in 2015 itself, the Paris Agreement said that every country must form a national designated authority to monitor the progress of these NDCs. From 2015, it was in 2024 in COP29 of UNFCCC in Baku, Azerbaijan, where it was finally implemented and made legally binding that every country must form its NDA. So India also under that formed its NDA this year, August 2025. Alright. So what do you need to keep in mind with this? That it was endorsed, it was made compulsory in COP29 of Baku, Azerbaijan. It has been provided for in Article 3 6 of COP21 of the Paris Agreement 2024, and in India it is obviously undertaken under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. It is a mandatory requirement. The total membership will be of 21 members, and it will be headed by the Secretary and not the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Alright, Secretary is important, and it will include other members of Ministry of External Affairs, Steel, Renewable Energy and NITI Aayog. Alright, okay. Other functions in the sense the basic functions: project approval, setting national criteria, monitoring carbon credit rules, use, etc. Significance: to boost clean energy and to support the progress of NDCs. These are India's NDCs. You can go through it, and this particular NDC is the NDC which India has achieved this year in June 2025. Alright, so it was set in 2030 and India has already achieved it 5 years ahead of its target. Alright, okay. UNFCCC, it came into existence at the Rio Earth Summit of 1992, and along with UNFCCC there were two other organizations also: United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification and United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, known as the three sister conventions. This particular convention came into or was adopted in 1994, and it held its first session or first COP in 1995 in Berlin, Germany. Alright, and it has its headquarters in Bonn, Germany. Alright, so you all can see all this, and COP29 was held in Baku, Azerbaijan, and COP30 will be held in Belém, Brazil. Alright, in the coming next 2-3 months of November end, I think. Alright, okay. Then the next one is that Sundarbans Tiger Reserve has been designated as the second largest tiger reserve in the country. The first largest is Nagarjun Srisailam Tiger Reserve in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and this has been designated as the second largest now. Previously, it was the 7th largest tiger reserve. 1044 square kilometer of territory has been added to it, and now it has become the second largest tiger reserve in the country. Now, when we talk about the tiger reserves and how do they actually alter their boundaries, or how are they elevated to a tiger reserve, etc., what are the various processes involved under it? Alright, so firstly, a proposal has to be made by the state. Then this proposal is taken up by the NTCA under the provisions of Section 38V of the Wildlife Protection Act. Then it is the then after Wildlife Protection Act, it is observed and seen into by the NTCA, and then eventually it is sent back to the state government, who notifies again that so and so tiger reserve has been, their boundary has been altered, or so and so national park or wildlife sanctuary has been designated as a tiger reserve. Alright, so this is all that you need to keep in mind with respect to this. Alright, okay. Then another news for this month is that Nepal has become the 6th country to ratify IBCA. Alright, so IBCA, International Big Cat Alliance, was launched by our Prime Minister in 2023 from Mysore, Karnataka, on the 50th anniversary of Project Tiger, which was launched in 1973. Alright, so the founding members of IBCA were 16, but out of these 16 members, only 6 members have actually ratified IBCA, and the 6 members being India, Somalia, Liberia, Eswatini, Nicaragua, and now Nepal. Alright, so we have 6 countries out of these 16 who have ratified this, and Nepal has officially joined it. It is a coalition of 95 big cat range as well as non-range countries, which will conserve 7 big cat species. Alright. Okay, then key species you can see. You need to remember that out of the 7 species, India only hosts 5 of them. Puma and jaguar are not found in India. The rest of them we have in India. Alright. Okay. Membership, it is not only limited to tiger range countries or big cat range countries. It is open to all UN member countries, and 24 countries, 9 international organizations have become part of it. 6 countries have ratified and become members of IBCA, and it is headquartered in India. India has also given a budgetary support of 150 crore of rupees for 5 years from 2023-4 to 2027-28. And recently this year, the president for IPCA has also been elected, chosen amongst the members only, and Bhupendra Yadav, our own Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, has been appointed as the president. All right. Okay. Then the president's rule has been extended in Manipur. The president's rule was implemented in Manipur this year in February. And when we look into the provisions of the president's rule, it is Article 356 and Article 365 of Part 18 of the Constitution, which talks about emergency provisions relating to the state. All right. So the term president's rule is nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. President's rule is an informal way of mentioning state emergency. So the term used in the Constitution is state emergency. Article 356 says that state emergency can be proclaimed in the state on failure of constitutional machinery, on a report by the governor to the president, or otherwise also by the president without a governor. And Article 365 says that president's rule can be implemented in the state in case the state government does not follow the orders of the central government. All right. Then just looking into it a little bit, that it was first implemented in February. The 6-month period ended, and after every 6 months, you have to get it renewed. So in August 13th, it was re-implemented. It was renewed, extended for a 6-month another period. All right. So why did this emergency got implemented here? Because there was this entire ethnic conflict between the Kukis and the Meitei tribes in Manipur, which couldn't be handled effectively by the elected government. So the then Chief Minister, N. Biren Singh, he resigned, and President's rule was implemented in the state on governor's report. All right. Okay. So you all can see the basic provisions of it. There are 3 types of emergencies. Everybody knows it: President's rule, the national emergency, and financial emergency. All right. It has nowhere been mentioned. Article 356 says that it can be implemented on a report by the governor or on the wishes of the president, as and how the president feels. In the sense that the report of the governor is not a mandatory, is not a compulsion. It can be implemented otherwise also if the central government feels so. All right. Okay. Then coming to conditions. One thing you need to keep in mind that once a state emergency has been proclaimed, it can stay put only for a period of 6 months, after which it has to be renewed, and then it can be extended for another 6 months. And this extension has to be undertaken every 6 months. Also, for a state's emergency can be put in place for a maximum of 3 years only, and not beyond that. All right. Then it also says that it needs to be approved by the parliament. Now it's an emergency, jaldi se implement hoti hai, so it can be implemented by the president on the recommendation of the prime minister and the cabinet. But after its implementation in that state, it has to be approved by both houses of the parliament within 2 months. All right, and then it can stay put for the next 4 more months, a total of 6 months, and then after which it has to be reapproved. All right. Okay. Now coming to international sections. The first topic is the peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. You don't need to get into the details of it. You just need to keep in mind that Nagorno-Karabakh region here, this is the major region which is in contention between the two countries. And this particular peace agreement has been brokered by Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has given this entire idea of Trump Route for Internal Peace and Prosperity, TRIP. So you need to remember TRIP, and under this, US says that it now has exclusive rights to undertake development in this particular enclave of Nakhchivan. All right. Okay. Then coming to the background and all is not so important. You just need to remember that this particular peace agreement has been brought into existence this time. And why is it important for India? Because Armenia is the only country in the region with which India has a friendship and cooperation treaty, and Azerbaijan falls into India's ambitious program of international north-south transport corridor. Alright. Okay. Now coming to the next one, which is the appointment of Rajiv Ranjan as the Vice President and the Chief Risk Officer of New Development Bank. Alright. So he's been appointed as the Vice President and CRO for a 5-year term. He was formerly the Executive Director of RBI and a member of the Monetary Policy Committee. The Monetary Policy Committee established in 2016, and it basically has this agenda to promote economic growth in the country and to keep inflation within limits of within the range of 2 to 6%. Alright. About New Development Bank, it is known as the BRICS Bank. It came into existence. It was proposed and signed and adopted to the Fortaleza Summit of BRICS in Brazil in 2014, and then it was formally implemented in 2015. Alright, so you can see it here, and membership is open to any of the members of the United Nations. It is headquartered in Shanghai, and it has other regional offices in South Africa and Brazil. It has an initial authorized capital of $100 billion, and out of which the 5 BRICS members, they have contributed a total of $50 billion, $10 billion. Alright. Okay, that is all with respect to this. Now coming to the next important one is India and Pakistan at the Permanent Court of Arbitration. Now, after the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty, Pakistan showed reservations that Kishangangai and Ratle hydropower projects must not be continued, and Pakistan but after the suspension of the treaty, India said that India is no longer going to suspend the construction of Kishangangai and Ratle hydropower project, and it is going to continue with the project. Alright. Now, when we look at the Indus Water Treaty, it is a water sharing mechanism between India and Pakistan, where there are a total of 6 rivers, including the Indus and 5 of its tributaries. So the western river, that is Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, there is a sharing formula between India and Pakistan of 80:20. That 80% of the water will go to Pakistan, 20% for India. And the eastern rivers, that is Ravi, Bias and Satluj, India will have undisputed control. So India undertook construction of these 2 dams on the western rivers, due to which Pakistan cited issues of facing probable shortages of water. Alright. So India suspended the construction when it had undertaken previously, but post the Pahalgam attack, after suspension of the treaty, India said that it is going to continue it. Now, when we look at the provisions of the Indus Water Treaty, it provides for a 3-level graded mechanism for undertaking settlements of dispute. The first one is between the dispute goes to the permanent Indus commissioners. If it is not resolved there, it goes to a neutral expert along with the permanent Indus commissioners, and if it is not settled at this level also, then it goes to the Permanent Court of Arbitration. Now, Pakistan took this entire issue directly to the Permanent Court of Arbitration without following the due process as perceived by India of the first 2 levels. So, when the Permanent Court of Arbitration ordered that this entire construction is illegal, India discarded the entire order, saying that due process was not followed. Alright. Okay, Permanent Court of Arbitration, you can keep in mind, established in 1899, and these are the various characteristics of it. Alright. Okay, now coming to the Trump tariffs. There is a lot of hullabaloo about the Trump tariffs, but all you need to keep in mind is that initially Trump proposed a 25% tariff on India, which increased to another addition of 25%, that is to a total of 50% tariffs. Alright, so Trump has imposed a 50% tariffs on India, and the reason cited by Trump for imposition of this tariff is that India takes Russian oil imports, alright, or buys oil from Russia, that India, through buying oil from Russia, is indirectly sponsoring the Russian war in Ukraine, alright, due to which it has undertaken putting off this high tariff on India, alright. Then just one simple concept of reciprocal tariffs. Reciprocal tariff simply implies that whatever rate of tariffs that one country faces in the other, the same rate of tariffs that country is going to impose on the other country. So whatever tariffs that India is imposing on American goods in India, the same rate of tariff America is going to impose on Indian imports to America. Alright, then you all can go through the details of it. Alright, then coming to the maritime, the one major exercise that took place in the month of August was SLINEX. It was between Sri Lanka and India, and you need to keep in mind that this was the 12th edition of SLINEX. Other than that, we also had one more exercise this month, which was Mercury exercise, and it was undertaken with Thailand, and these were just two major exercises. Then after this, the next is the awards for this month. There are two major awards that you need to keep in mind: the 71st National Film Awards and the Equator Prize. All right. So 71st awards. You only need to keep in mind that we organized by Ministry of Information Broadcasting, and who are the winners for this award. All right. So the best feature film is 12th Fail. The award is shared for the best actors between Shah Rukh Khan and Vikrant Massey. For 12th Fail, direction is Dipto Sen for Kerala Story. Feature film and all is not important. Shah Rukh Khan has won his first national award after 30 years. Best actress was Rani Mukherjee, and other than that, nothing here. All right. Instituted, the basis you have to remember that it was instituted in 1954, and under this also we give the Dadasaheb Phalke Award, which was instituted in 1969, which recognizes lifetime contribution, and this particular Dadasaheb Phalke Award is named after the father of Indian cinema, which is D.G. Phalke, and the first winner as well as the first female winner of this award was Devika Rani. And like all awards in India, this award is also presented by the President of India. All right. Okay. Then coming to the Equator Prize, which is given by UNDP, and this particular prize is given every year on 9th of August. And why? Because 9th of August is observed as Indigenous Peoples' Day, that is Tribal People's Day, and this award was given to 10 awardees, and it was announced in 1982. This year it was given to 10 awardees, and out of these 10 awardees, one was the Bibi Fatima Swazahe, stung in from I think Telangana or Hyderabad. All right, so that is all from this. Then one simple news from the sports section, which is with respect to the FIDE World Cup. All right, and this you just need to keep in mind that this particular event this year will be organized in Goa, India, and this is after 22 years, I think 23 years that it has come back to India. The last one in India was in 2002, where Vishwanath Anand had won the Vishwanath Anand had won the tournament. Alright. So that is all in detail that you need to keep in mind with respect to August. And thank you. And Sir is going to brief you all about certain other important points that you need to keep in mind for the month of August. Alright.
Okay, thank you, Ananya. Now, what I'm going to do is just give you a quick snapshot. Ma'am has already covered the events in detail. So, what I'm just going to do now is list down the events in terms of its importance, right? The first thing that I'm going to do is just cover the important days. One that you should remember, and that comes, to my mind. One is the 1st of August is the World Wide Web Day, right? And this has been celebrated from 1989, right? Second is that we should remember is the Hiroshima Day, which is 6th of August. Nam has already shown a slide on that. So on this particular day, Hiroshima was bombed, and the name of the bomb was Little Boy, and this was dropped by B-29 bombers, and which is also called as Enola Gay, right? So 6th of August. The third one is MS Swaminathan's 100 years, and that is the reason we have this MS Swaminathan Award that's given to this Nigerian professor this time, right? First time this award has been given. He's father of the Indian Green Revolution, and he was also awarded the Bharat Ratna last year. So very important personality to watch out for the month of August. The next one that you need to remember, which is 7th of August, MS Swaminathan. And the Nigerian professor's name is Abdele. So he got this award this time. Fourth day that you should remember is 8th of August, which is the Quit India Movement Day. So on this day, 1942, Quit India Movement was launched, right? Man has already given you details on this. Then the next one is the 9th of August. And 9th of August is the Nagasaki Day, right? Now again, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we've given you a detailed pointer on that. The second bomb, which is also called as the Fat Man, was dropped in Nagasaki, right? Then, of course, 15th of August. Now, every pointer related to 15th of August is important. So I will give you this recommendation that do watch Prime Minister Modi's speech, what he has mentioned about the Sudarshan Chakra mission, about the deep sea mission, right? About the critical mineral mission, about eradicating or removing Marxism, right? All these points become quite important, right? And the schemes that he has launched. So Independence Day, 79th Independence Day, this is quite important, right? Please watch out the speech and things that are related to it. He has also done, made a commitment as far as giving one-time amount of 15,000 rupees to almost, I think, 1 crore people. And this is part of the Viksit Yojgar Yojana scheme. So you can have a look at it also. Okay? Then we are looking at 23rd of August. I think this day is quite important because this month, this year, we have had a lot of news around space. We had PSLV C-59 launched, Proba 3, which was a satellite of European Space Agency, right? Which was a solar observation satellite that they had sent. Then we had PSLV C-60, the SpaceX mission. Then we had Navik, the Navik 2, which eventually did not meet its objective and it failed. But this was a 100th launch of ISRO, so that was also quite important. Then we have new ISRO chief, right, who is V. Narayan, right? He replaced S. Somnath. Then we are talking about, the Gaganyaan mission. We are talking about Bharatiya Antariksha mission in 2035, right? We are talking about Chandrayaan 4 mission. We are talking about Chandrayaan 5 mission, the LUPEX mission, as it is called, which we are doing with JAXA. And of course, Axiom 4 mission that has happened, in which Subanshu Shukla became the first person from India to go to the International Space Station and the second after Squadron Rakesh Sharma to go into the space. So I think space is a very hot topic for this particular month. Okay? So please do this topic. The next one is the 29th of August, which is the National Sport Day. So it is the birthday of Major Dhyan Chand, right? Major Dhyan Chand won us 3 Olympic gold. This was 1928 in Antwerp. Then 1932, which was in London, and 1936 in front of Hitler. So Major Dhyan Chand, Khel Ratan Award is also there. Right? This time 4 people got Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratan Award. Manu Bhaker, Harmanpreet, then T. Gukesh, and Praveen Singh. So Praveen Kumar, high jumper in the para-athlete division. Harmanpreet is hockey. Gukesh, as you know, is chess. And Manu Bhaker for shooting. She won in last year's Olympics, right? So 25 lakh rupees is given Major Dhyan Chand जो प्राइज मनी दिया था, ठीक है? अर्जुन अवार्ड में इस साल 32 दिए जाते हैं, 32 लोग अवार्ड दिया गया, 15 लाख दिया था. सो ये छोटे-छोटे पॉइंट्स बस याद रखना. पहले इसका नाम हुआ करता था राजीव गांधी खेल रत्न अवार्ड और 1991 से शुरू हुआ था. पहला अवार्डी जो थे वो विश्वनाथन आनंद, right? And 2021 the name was changed. So these are like some of the important days that you should remember for the month of August. Also, if you look at some important, appointees for this month, ma'am has already mentioned. So I'm just giving you a quick snapshot again. One is Urjit Patel. Now, Urjit Patel was the 24th governor of RBI. Right? So at the time of demonetization, he was a governor. So now he has taken over as the executive director of IMF. Right? So when you're doing some appointees, new appointments, also, in a way cover the organization. So like here you can we can talk about IMF, for instance. Where is it based? It is based in Washington, D.C. Right? What is the so-called artificial currency of IMF? It is called the special drawing rights, right? What is special drawing rights made of? It is made of dollar, euro, renminbi, which is Chinese currency, yuan, right, and pound. ठीक है, और सबसे ज्यादा वोटिंग राइट जो है वो यूएस का है इसमें, which is almost 17%. India has got around 2.7% of voting rights. The US plus with its allies dominates the active. Georgieva Kristeva is the managing director of IMF. IMF is based in Washington, D.C. It was formed because of the Bretton Woods agreement in 1944, established in 1945. Right? So, ये सब points बस याद रखना. ठीक है? तो Urjit Patel, also Geeta Gopinath, she was a deputy director, at position number 2 after Christiana Georgieva in IMF. She has recently retired. Now she is joined as a professor of the Harvard University. So, this Urjit Patel's appointment is important, right? So, you can be asked, like, who is Urjit Patel? He was 24th governor of RBI. So, it was Urjit Patel. Raghuram Rajan was the 23rd governor, right? Then, once BJP government came, then after 2 years, I think he left, and then Urjit Patel came in. After Urjit Patel, it was Shaktikant Das. And after Shaktikant Das, now it is Sanjay Malhotra, right? Who is the present RBI chief. Okay, also RBI as a topic is very important because this year would be the 90th year for RBI. So you should basically know, everything about RBI. When it was set up, 1935, right? And 1st of April 1935, there is a headquarters Bombay. Who was the first RBI head? Osborne Smith, right? So first Indian governor of RBI was C.D. Deshmukh. So basically, just have your facts ready about topics that we are discussing. So next important appointment that you should know is Rajiv Ranjan. I was already mentioned, and I'm asked this question quite often. So this is basically he has taken over as the chief risk officer or the vice president at the New Development Bank. Now, New Development Bank is also called as BRICS Bank. On where is it based? It is based in Shanghai, right? Now, BRICS Bank, as of now, has got the following members. One is the founding members of BRICS, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And besides this, 2 more members of the BRICS are there, which is UAE, one from the Middle East, and the other one is Egypt. Right? You know that BRICS has got 10 members, right? Besides Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, we also have Egypt, we also have UAE, we also have Ethiopia, and we also have Iran, right? And now Indonesia has joined. So the other 3 haven't joined. Indonesia hasn't joined still, Ethiopia hasn't joined still, and Iran hasn't joined still the New Development Bank. But yes, the New Development Bank has got some borrowing partners. You should know the names of these borrowing partners. There are actually 5 borrowing partners. One is Uzbekistan, one is Bangladesh, one is Algeria, one is Colombia, and one is Uruguay, right? So these are the 5 borrowing partners of BRICS. Also remember that in BRICS, they invite members from other countries or those who are part of UNGA to become part of it. But the voting rights, as far as BRICS goes, 55% at least should be with this particular founding group. That's the deal. So they will always have 55% voting rights. The others can join in. But these BRICS countries will have 55% voting rights. So remember that, the New Development Bank. When was this decision taken to set up New Development Bank? This was 2014. What is the reason that New Development Bank came up? Because it's in a way a counter to the International Monetary Fund, right? International Monetary Fund is majorly driven by USA. But if you look at the BRICS, NDB, so they, to get the funds. So when does, in fact, I'm so sorry. BRICS, the NDB is basically is not a counter to IMF, it's a counter to the World Bank, right? It's a counter to the World Bank. So it is basically for development activities. The counter to IMF is a contingency reserve fund. Now, both these decisions were taken in 2014 at the Fortaleza conference, right, which is in Brazil. And you have a contingency reserve arrangement office in their headquarters is in Fortaleza, Brazil. So that's a counter to IMF, remember that. So that's a balance of payment crisis, right? So these countries have decided to have this contingency reserve arrangement with a corpus of $100 billion to basically ensure that if there is a crisis, then this particular contingency reserve fund is available, right? Understood? And similarly, for development activities, we have IMF. So remember that. Yeah. The other important appointment, Rajiv Ranjan was part of the other important thing that we need to look at is when Rajiv Ranjan was part of the Monetary Policy Committee. And who has come in place of that is Indrani Bhattacharya. So now we have a new member in the Monetary Policy Committee. Monetary Policy Committee has 3 members from the RBI and 3 from the government. So Rajiv Ranjan was earlier with the government, with the Monetary Policy Committee, and now he has moved out of this place and now joined the NDP. Remember that. Okay? And who has come in place of him is Indrani Bhattacharya. So remember one thing, Pooja Gupta was the other person who had joined the Monetary Policy Committee, right? She joined a couple of months ago. So that was in news, and she came in replacement of Michael Patra, who was the CEO of the MPC, right? MPC is led by the governor of RBI. So this was the second important appointment. Okay? Rajiv Ranjan, Urjit Patel, and Indrani Bhattacharya. Then, ma'am has already discussed about the awards. The Equator Award, which is quite important because the Bibi Fatima group has got that award. So you should remember that. And Equator Award is given by UNDP. That's why it becomes quite important, right? So remember that. And the Equator Prize Award. So both these prizes becomes quite important. And 71st National Film Awards, right? So just have a look at the category. When did this award start? It started in the year 1954. Right? So remember these things. So also, if you look at the military exercise, ma'am told you about it. Slinex, which is with Sri Lanka, this was a 12th edition of it. And Maitri, which we do with Thailand, it was a 14th edition of Maitri, right? So again, important. We do one more exercise with Thailand, which is called as Ayodhya. It started last year. So last year was the foundation stone was laid for the Ayodhya, and it was launched, and last year also we initiated this particular military exercise called Ayodhya. So even in Ayodhya, they consider, Ayodhya as a Ram's birthplace there, like we consider Ayodhya here. So we have a lot of cultural similarities that way. Okay, so Ayodhya is the military exercise that started last year, and this year we did Maitri. And this was the 14th edition. So Slinex and Maitri is what you should remember. Okay. As far as sports is concerned, ma'am has already mentioned this year the chess World Championship is going to be held in Goa, and last year it was held in Singapore, in which D. Gukesh defeated Din Laden, and he became the youngest world champion. So you know about D. Gukesh. He won the Candidates Open last year when he won the World Championship. And yeah, so this time the World Cup is going to be in Goa. Okay? ये वाला part एक हो गया. दूसरा, we should know about Khelo India Water Games. Now they have introduced, I think the 6th Khelo India game now. The Khelo India mission was started in 2017, and we have the Khelo India Youth Games, which was played in Bihar this time in Rajgir, and Gaj Simha was the mascot of it. Maharashtra won it, right? Then Khelo India Winter Games, which was played in 2 UTs. One is Ladakh, and the other one was played in Gulmarg, Jammu and Kashmir. Then we have Khelo India Beach Games, then we have Khelo India Para Games, and we have Khelo India University Games, right? And now we have Khelo India Water Games. Now, where is Khelo India Water Games played? It is Bangalore, where it is. Okay, so yeah, and other important topics, if I look at this month, is 100 years of UPSC. So UPSC was established on the 1st of, it was actually the Federal Services Commission, which was established on the 1st of October 1926, and now it is 100 years of that. So UPSC becomes important. Ross Baker was the first head of UPSC, and the first Indian, after independence, first person to head UPSC. The name was changed from Federal Public Services Commission to UPSC, and the first commission head was Kriplani. Right. Similarly, you should know the first woman head of UPSC, that was Rose Bathew. Right, Rose Bathew, and as of now, Dr. Ajay Kumar is the head of UPSC. It's a constitutional body, Article 316, and he replaced Preeti Sudha. Right? The appointment is by the President of India, and President can also remove the UPSC chairman. Okay? So, एक हमारा UPSC. So that's about it. I think we have majorly covered all the important points for this month, and we are also doing GK Marathon in 3 cities: Lucknow, Delhi, and Chandigarh. So if you are from these cities, you can just visit our website and register yourself for these marathon sessions. So these will be 8-hour sessions that we are doing in each of these cities, and are going to be covering January to September GK in detail. And I mean, we are going to touch upon almost 80 to 90 important topics. So I think those of you who belong to these cities or nearby areas, you can just come down on 11th. It's in Lucknow, and then 25th is in Chandigarh, and 26th in Delhi, and attend these sessions. I think it will be helpful if you are seriously preparing for the CLAT examination, right? So Ananya ma'am, me, and Aditya Vaklu, who's All India Rank 29, CLAT 2014 paper, 3 of us are going to be, he joined the NLS, so 3 of us are going to be taking this session, and it is going to be quite worthwhile and good for you. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the YouTube session. Please drop in your feedback, your comments. If you like the session, press the like button. All these things help us, so please help making that possible strong. Thank you very much.